Welcome to Clips, where we share facts or factoids taken from our longer, more in-depth episodes in little bite-sized chunks. Today I'm here to quickly clarify why it seems like we're always eager to make fun of the Reichsrevolver. But first, what is a Reichsrevolver? At its core, the Reichsrevolver 1879 is a cavalry weapon. As a matter of fact, it inherits this huge grip from the previous single-shot percussion pistols, and it makes for something of an awkward grip. The 1883 is more compact and not designed specifically for cavalry, and therefore has a better grip, although not one that I would call perfect. Internally, they're just about identical, although the 83 would have a shorter barrel. Now, the mechanism of this gun is single action only, which means we cannot just pull the trigger in order to fire it. We must cock the hammer back every time and then allow it to drop. The hammer spring is very heavy because it had very hard primers at the time, so this is not a light-hearted operation. The release is pretty smooth though, that part's good. The other thing that the Reichsrevolver had was a manual safety. Now, I've been unable to find documentation on exactly why they felt this was so critically necessary, but I believe what they were attempting to prevent was hammer sort of bounce and slap. And so, if you could get this into its proper position and then lock her out, there was no chance of the hammer bouncing far enough back to allow it to slip over the trigger and therefore negligently or rather accidentally discharge the firearm. That is a very specific use case. You'd have to get it dropped at just the right angle with just the right momentum in order to get this guy to come back and then slip past the trigger and set off a round. Although it is technically possible, it seems like they really went to a lot of effort to avoid that. Now, in terms of loading and unloading the pistol, the Reichsrevolver is unfriendly there as well because it is a gate loader, which means we load from the rear. You must manually index the cylinder after having rebounded the hammer manually. There's no sort of detents, there's no resistance, it's very easy to overshoot your goal and mess up and have to come back around. Now, if you want to fire this gun and you get a stock case, when you go to eject, you notice we have recessed cylinders, so you can't even get a fingernail in there because you're going to have the rim down in there. What you have to use is actually this ejector rod, which was a separate component kept on the holster. And you'd have to detach this from your holster and then use it to unload each of your rounds, 6 in total, then tuck this back into your holster, or I guess lose it in the heat of battle. Now, in a vacuum, this gun doesn't seem too insane. Sure, the 1879 has an awkward grip and the hammer's really heavy, but that's not untrue of a lot of early revolvers. What stands out, however, are the dates involved. Now, in the US, we're a bit sympathetic to single actions because our own model 1873 would be used for a couple decades. In Europe, however, double actions had been popular for many years, going all the way back to the percussion cap era, but reaching common military use in the early 1870s. A good example of a European double-action revolver is this Chamelot-Delvigne of 1873. Taking a look at this gun, which, by the way, do the math, that's 6 years earlier adoption, we have a number of improved features. First and foremost, we have double action. So I'm riding the hammer, but you get the idea. Self-cocking, self-releasing. And we still have single action if we want it. The grip is designed for a human hand, and we have a knuckle here that actually helps position it into the web of our hand so that we stay put while pulling through that double action. This allows for faster follow-up shots. Not just the fact that mechanically we can shoot faster, but also the ergonomics of being able to hold our point of aim easier. That's very smart. In terms of ejection, we're still a gate loader, but we have a rod that remains fixed to the gun and can be pulled out, snapped over, and then used to eject each of our cartridges. There's one, and then unfortunately it doesn't give you a lot of help in terms of finding your next spot, so if you overshoot, you get into the same potential problem of and then having to come back around. So this is still a little loosey-goosey, but it's a sincere improvement over the Reichsrevolver in terms of speed and use. The Chamelot-Delvigne still has a manual rebounding hammer, so if I let go of that trigger, then I'm either going to have to go for a cock or I'm going to have to pull for double action in order to prevent the firing pin from dragging on any primers in the cylinder. And you can even hear it whacking on the sides of the cylinder in there. So if you go to load and you forget to go to that little rebounded position, you won't necessarily be able to roll the cylinder. And there's the potential for this exact scenario where you load and then try to drag across, and if you really gorilla'd it, you would tear things up. So just a little bit of a have to remember manual feature there, which is why by 1879, we would actually see better guns. Like this Swiss Model 1878, which actually is a gun that came out in 1879 and therefore is a very good thing to compare to the Reichsrevolver. This gun is both single, and double action, excellent, and it has a very unique loading feature that helps things along. First and foremost, note that if I fire this gun and release the trigger, it automatically rebounds that hammer. I don't have to pay attention to whether or not it's in the correct position for loading and unloading. Already good. Number two, we have a clear ejector rod that flips over easily and can be used to move back and forth to eject our cartridges. But before we even do that, let's look at how we're going to load and unload this guy. Let me get the focus a little bit better. This gun uses a series of valleys, cliffs, and plateaus in order to bias the cylinder into its position. So as we shoot the gun, you notice it always aligns such that a cartridge cannot just fall out the back. There is no gate. It's just that the rim prevents it from ever slipping past this opening. But if we grab this textured front of the cylinder and manually rotate till we hear a click, now we're in line. We can load one, and then we can roll until we hear another click, and then we can load two. Or we could be using our ejector. So aligned, roll until you hear the click, and then that is a lot of little extra help that makes it easier to load or unload this in poor conditions to make it sort of a mechanical feedback device that helps you understand what you're doing. Now, the one downside to this is you have to be intelligent enough to then roll this into a sort of neutral gray position where it has a little wobble, and then that tells you that you're ready to go into action and that you're not going to have any cartridges falling out the back of the cylinder. So just for a final comparison, Germany has a gigantic single action that uses a separate rod to eject, gives no bias to the cylinder, manual rebound, although being single action, that's to be expected. And then 3 screws to get the side plate off. I didn't even talk about all this, but 3 screws to get the side plate off and a lever to take the arbor out to get the cylinder out. This gun, if you flip over your ejector rod, the arbor comes right out. You can take the cylinder out. And if you want to get into the action of the gun, it is actually 1 captive screw, so you can't even lose it. This guy loosens up and the whole thing flips out. We'll do another bit of work on this at a later date. But look at the comparison in terms of technology. Clearly, Germany was nowhere near cutting edge with this design, and it's fine to give up a lot of extras for reliability, but I think we can agree that the extremely slow rate of fire, terrible reloading operation, massive weight, and awkward grips made the 1879 in particular a lackluster choice in its year of adoption. But just because I wouldn't want it in warfare doesn't mean that it isn't a cool thing to have in a collection, and this guy certainly draws a lot of attention. If you'd like to learn more about the Reichsrevolver, we do have episodes up about it. We have an episode up about the Chamelot-Delvigne. We presently do not have one up on the Swiss 1878 as I'm looking into how to make the cartridges for it, but that is also planned, so please subscribe to our series. All right, have a good one.